16, 2025. Item 1 is call to order and determining a quorum. Have 4 out of 5 members today, so we have a quorum. Item 2 is adjustments to the agenda. We've never had any yet. Anybody got any? Hearing none. Item 3 is citizen comments. These are comments not related to the pre-application for Topsail Farm.
General time to speak comments?
Yes.
Oh,
Do you have
I'll take a second to,
yeah, sure.
we have to go up to the mic.
Would you please, so we can all hear you and everybody online can hear you? If you would share your name.
Oh, so my name's Stephen Carmichael. And I own a home in town. My warranty of deed says I'm a tenant at my house. Have you ever read your warranty of deed before?
Yes, I have.
It says you're a tenant because you live in a company. Town of Waldeboro is incorporated as a company and you're a tenant. So anyhow, I'm just wanting to speak to the growing trend of nonprofit entities growing large buildings in town. So one of the benefits of being a nonprofit, you don't have to pay the rent that we do as homeowners. You can avoid those taxes because you have multi-million-dollar complexes that you're not paying anything on. So
Would you mind speaking up a tad?
Yeah.
Just speak a little louder.
I'm speaking to the trend of a lot of nonprofit buildings that are really big, that are valuable. And that's the growing trend. I don't think it's really healthy for a community to have a lot of big buildings that are not paying any tax. In order for a model of a company to run smoothly, your renters, which is apparently your homeowners, are paying in for services. And so you have less and less of them, then you're not going to have the same services over time. And some of those are offset obviously by donations that are made by the entities. They like to give gifts to towns, and they like to, say, well, we can give you this and that. Mainly because it's a survival mode for them to be able to continue to be nonprofits. You have to write off millions of dollars and things throughout the year to stay nonprofit, right? So, I give you this, I can give you that, and these relationships continue to go on. And then doing that, there's a lot of influence on, like, I can't throw a gala at my house and have a bunch of people come over and serve them a lot of stuff and influence anything in the town because I don't have anything to offer, right? So like, that's my concern, is that if you get too many of these nonprofits in town and they can throw galas and invite everybody over and influence all these different things, then you have a lot of sway as far as what direction things are going to go in your town. So now being on planning, you're kind of the front lines of like what you can allow, in the town, and so that's just what I wanted to say, really. And is there any questions about that? Yeah.
I got a question. What are your thoughts on the new Maine Health? I assume they're a nonprofit and they're gonna build that big. Would that be something that kind of got you're
That's
thinking
what kinda
about
got me
it?
thinking, because if you read the newspaper and the Lincoln County News, it mentions already the community center being on that site. And so there's discussions on other ideas for the site, right? Those typically, like there wouldn't even be any discussion about the community center unless they were going to help you do it. Like they're probably going to say, well, we'll donate the property, we'll give you a percentage of the bill, like, it's because this is how they're going to function. They're going to write that stuff out as, we're not profiting of anything. That's their model. And of course, well, that helps the town. We don't have to borrow as much money. We'll put it to the voters, let them decide, and become like the Scassets Community Center, which that's a whole different subject. But
This might be a subject for the select board.
Yeah. But, you know. I don't know, but,
Hmm.
but I don't have any big spiel or anything like that, just it's more of a concern, right? So. Mainly because I've been thinking about. Look at the Gray Hill project, that's nonprofit housing, so they in general potentially sells their old building to a. Probably for housing, right? Because technically that building was for housing. So. You know, we end up probably putting some kind of housing complex, which probably is run by another nonprofit. So it just keeps growing. And we have less and less people building new homes and stuff like that, so. Yeah. Okay. Oh, won't waste your time anymore.
All right.
Well,
Thank
you're,
you.
you're at a waste of time, and I don't think that select board comment's made to, none of this is dismissing you.
Yeah,
That's another group that could probably do all to hear from you. So I just hope you take that as encouragement, not
Yeah.
ignoring you.
yeah, I mean, it's just a discussion, right?
Okay.
So like, you know, we're in a pretty decent town
Mhm.
and we're all civil people. And we all want to see the town do well and succeed, so, but we don't want to overlook some of the issues that can come from the trend that's going on, right? So, but we have we can't decide who's applying for the permits, like, we don't have control over that, correct? So,
Right.
but you probably are seeing that most of the big development is from entities that are got the money to do it right now, which is your nonprofits, and at this point, not a lot of big businesses are gonna build trinkets in town because there's no mills anymore and all that stuff, right? So,
Max, does the town have any say, like as a percentage of its growth about how much many nonprofits can come into the town? Or the town is there anything that,
In
to his point,
In general, there's not too many things we can limit entirely, like unless there's a state statute that specifically permits that, like.
Right.
Like medical marijuana and recreational marijuana stores,
Right.
that's something that we can cap. Some towns will do something on short-term rentals, which I'm not gonna touch that with a 10-foot pole,
right?
but nonprofits, that's a really hard thing to
Yeah.
cap.
But just to this gentleman's point, theoretically, if I'm hearing you, if all the new development was nonprofit, that would erode the tax base, which would affect the town. I mean, does somebody have a handle on that? Maybe you?
The data.
But yeah, I mean, we can always look at some data and what people end up buying,
Right.
but I'm only going based on what I've seen recently, and I mean, Maine Health is a huge outlier in this case. But you know, some people are like churches, for example, they're non-taxable pieces of land.
Right.
They're buying or renting out some of the properties in town.
Right.
Some people like the laundromat across the street, they'll have half a building that's available for lease. Many nonprofits looked at that half, not to own, but to lease out. So in terms of can we limit them? We do have something in here about community service organizations and where they can be, and I guess that's something we can talk about later,
Okay,
but
no, I'm just curious, but it makes a point.
Good enough. Hold on.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is item 4, pre-application for Topsail Farm. Would you introduce your project?
just because that's got the mic.
Been 8 years to 9 years.
Wow.
So, well, thanks for taking the time. We would wanted to give a little bit of an update, introduce ourselves. And I think essentially 8 years ago, 9 years ago, we stood here and have sort of accomplished what we set out to do, building the business, and yeah, it's happening and going. After 8 years, I feel like we're learning something new every year. In last year, I was made aware of a grant that was coming through the USDA. for resilient food systems here in the state of Maine. And having grown up in Montville on a small farm, understanding, you know, in our mission to support our community of farmers, fishermen has really been a core tenet of our mission at Topsail, with our culinary program and all of that. And so I was really interested with this grant. I'd never written a grant before and spent a lot of time working on it, and was humbled and surprised to be one of the 5 businesses in Maine that were awarded this grant. And the grant essentially is for building infrastructure and equipment for value-added products to support Maine agriculture. And I put forth a 3-year project outlining the sources and products. I have a background in digital marketing, and had previously had a food company where I put products on grocery store shelves throughout the US, and I'm not doing that again. So this is really, the goal is very simply to continue our mission of supporting Maine agriculture with direct-to-consumer value-added products. So Topsail is the entity that will buy the vegetables and fruit and turn those into products for sale through our online website, and mostly through our online website and some strategic partnerships in the state. So this past summer and fall, I began that, and when we were not having events, I was working in and around my culinary team late nights and early mornings to kind of start the process, and it became very evident that the two cannot exist together. And you know, when the fruit and vegetables are coming up from the ground, that is also the height of our event season. And so it really, you know, the grant and sort of the conditions on the ground at Topsail, you know, they really would require this building. So so the building itself is for food, you know, for additional food production and storage space. Part of the plan is to have a large freezer that will allow us to buy the fruits and vegetables and take the burden off of storage from farmers when things are actually coming up, and then we can cadence out our production over the year. The ideal location, the location that I outlined through the grant, is to have it located right next to our current event barn for many reasons, mainly convenience, you know, and working with the utilities that exist there. I have done a little bit of research of what it would look like to put it in other places on the farm, and it's exponentially more expensive. And so, yeah, so that is our plan from the state approval and the USDA approval. There is a timeline on this grant. I got the contract in December, so it was approved in April and May, and it took that long to get the actual approval. So now it is greenlit from their perspective, and so we wanted to answer any questions and get more detail. Yeah.
I think I know the answer to this, but I just saw on the news the other day, the PFAS, this farm up in Fairfield, it's contaminated with it. When they give you this grant, what do they require of you to do to your soil and all that? Do they say check it for these forever chemicals? Is that part and parcel of this?
Yeah, so the only thing that the grant is focused on is the infrastructure and the equipment. So it's actually not vegetables and fruit from Topsail Farm. It's actually us purchasing and committing to purchase vegetables and fruit from other farms. So
Other main farms.
other main
Other main
farms.
farms.
Yeah, so not there's no interest in you know, fruits and vegetables from Topsail Farm, which is a good thing because we don't produce a lot of that vegetables here. So it's really about us purchasing and then being sort of the marketing and sort of value added arm to these farms. So
But it's an interesting question. Do you have to, is that a question you ask from your farmers?
Yeah, that would be the.
For testing or?
we're mostly almost exclusively purchasing like or certified organic
Mhm.
vegetables. But the sourcing and the growth of our sources over the coming years will be sort of part and parcel with the ability to buy more at this point in time where we purchased a lot of things locally here in Waldoboro from some farms, but that will come after we have the infrastructure to process.
But also, I would say on the, any food production, we're accountable to, any of the USDA
Yeah,
restrictions and state health,
Yep.
health restrictions, so. Whatever they require,
Yeah.
we comply with.
yep, and you send all the products to
Send samples, that's not good.
Beth Calder at the University of Maine Extension.
So it seems like it might be just by virtue of the way the grant is written, it sort of seems like you're committing to this idea for 3 years. But are you writing it in such a way that you're free to take other avenues after 3? In other words, maybe it's not all Maine stuff, or maybe it's not all local. But you repeat it quite often in the description that we're gonna do this for 3 years, but is that just the grant?
It's outlining what we'll do for 3 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
They require a 3-year
Yeah.
plan.
Yeah.
That's not, you know, I think, Barbara, you were here when we originally came. We sort of laid out, you know, our focus was first, you know, Sarah having grown up on a farm, seeing the struggles of farmers, realized we have to find a sustainable source of revenue to support the business, which events really is that sustainable revenue. And we've been layering in the farming. You know, we've built a pretty sizable garden. We have animals on the property, which we use, you know, as part of our, you know, our culinary program. And, you know, I think this is sort of the next evolution of that. But I think in addition to creating something that's sustainable for us, you know, creating opportunities for other people that may not have the skills and the production facilities or the marketing capabilities that we collectively have.
so can you describe what you think? There's a lot of action going on, you know, coming into your entrance for all your different things going on. Like how much, I mean, deliveries, what size vehicles, how, I mean, you mentioned 4 employees, but is that parking lot the same as what you've got now, or is it enlarged, or how are you handling all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, this is, there's no material change to the sort of the flow of the business. There would be us going to farms and farmers and picking up things and you know, I did that. I went to Sheepscott and Whitefield several times this summer on Fridays and picked up truckloads of things to process and that sort of thing. So I don't anticipate it being, you know, I don't know if
This is
they're
a mass scale.
Yeah,
operation.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
be
But you're gonna be
semis
shipping this stuff out, so there's gonna be a lot of shipping
No,
involved.
our
right?
inventory is being actually held in Montville, so we're not actually doing any of the fulfillment. That's happening somewhere else.
So you're gonna manufacture, make your jams and whatnot here, and then it's gonna go to Montville and get
Yep.
shipped out?
Yes,
They do all the picking and packing.
Yeah. I can't do everything.
What?
I can't do everything. Yeah, there's a company in Montville that does that for him.
Mhm. But they have to come back and forth with vehicles to,
Yeah, we're not talking like, I mean, you know, we're not talking, we're talking, I hope to grow it,
Yeah.
but you know, being in business for 8 years so far, we have, you know, a delivery from 1 or 2 distributors once a week, sometimes twice a week. So it doesn't seem like that would be there. I don't anticipate material change in the amount of traffic in and out of the Topsail farm.
so you're not gonna give classes in there or like kind of cooking things and. it's kind of a fun problem to have actually, but you're gonna have it generate a lot of food waste. You could have got
We
it composting
everything-
somewhere.
We compost everything at the farm and have pigs, so.
Yeah.
We've had to deal with that with the events, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty proud of what we've done with that.
Mhm.
We have virtually zero food waste going out the door.
I was just perusing this letter from Chief Derek Booker about the crossing the street.
Yeah.
Did you get to read that?
Yeah.
I'm looking at it and I'm just thinking, okay, what would the remedy be? Is there anything where you could ameliorate this or what is it?
I'd love to talk about that and happy to. That is definitely part of the events business that
Right.
would really, that is not what this sort of topic of discussion is about. But I'm happy
Someone's
to,
phone.
yeah. And I'm happy to talk about it and talk about what protocols we have in place
Yeah.
for crossing. And but in terms of the building of the building that we're talking about, there's no connection between sort of people
Not going
crossing the
back
street
easily.
for the topic at hand, but I'm happy to talk about it.
No, I'm just, again, I mean, no disrespect, but if the chief of the EMS take the time to write a letter, you gotta take that seriously, right?
Sure, I am, yes.
And,
Yeah.
I
So,
don't know, I'm looking for solutions. I mean, I
Sure.
think you guys are
We have
great.
had some proactive conversations.
Okay,
with
okay,
the,
that's,
police. We had a sign brought up, one of the. Basically the speedometer signs that tell you how fast. you're
oh, I
going.
see,
I
okay.
mean, it's a real problem
Yeah, the
I
speed is a huge problem.
for us, but like, I think for the community in terms of the speeds that go through that area coming
Right.
from both directions. And I certainly, we would be open to supporting whatever initiatives need to be taken, but
You know, the
it's a
DOT.
public safety issue.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
anytime we have events, we have people monitoring that when there's mass crossings happening,
Yeah, and I'd like to speak to
is-
that just for a second, just to, so with every event that we have on the farm. We have very detailed timelines about where people are, what's happening and when. And part of our very detailed sort of pre-event discussions with all of our event managers and people on property are the safe passage of people from one side of the business, to the other. And so that's something that we've taken very seriously. There's never been an incident in the 8 years that we've been doing this. And we want very much to continue with that trend, but that is just to know that prior to this letter, it's something that we have, always taken really seriously. And so it seems to me the natural next step would be to see what options are. I mean, I've joked about like, we should put cobblestone in between, the two sides of the property, and I'm sure that would really go over well. But, it looks to me like that would be a discussion with, with the town about options in terms of signage, state DOT. I mean, it seems like there's definitely some low hanging fruit that could happen in terms of signage, which I will absolutely take, from here. But I just wanted to clarify that we do take that really seriously. And outside of the events, I don't know if there'd be any different than any crossing of 32 up and down the corridor from, there are 1-2 people. Sometimes I go across the street, often. But we have signs on both sides that say, stop, be careful, so we're doing what we can from communication on our end with our guests.
What is do you have insight into what the process is on?
I
Signage or blinking lights or whatever. it may be?
don't, I know.
Sounds
Max-
like I have to talk to
Yeah.
DOT
It's
after
the
this. don't I?
DOT. I go by there quite often this summer on my motorcycle and it's beautiful. I mean, occasionally there'll be an event you'll have. And it seems like everything is smooth. I mean, I haven't. But the people going from across the street to that one building. But what is it? So you guys are connected in that regard?
Sure.
Yeah,
People stay in the farmhouse.
I see, okay,
Yeah.
I just.
and there are
So they got-
sometimes, when we have weddings or
Yeah.
couples we have a ceremony location on the, sometimes they gather on the lawn on the other side and.
Okay.
But there's no evening events that are happening at the farmhouse that would then have masses of people crossing back over, anything in the evening is always at the event barn.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, cool. But we would love to collaborate and figure out a way to make that safer for everybody, because I mean, it's. Traffic moves through there really quickly, and we've requested and they've complied, the police put up speedometer signs, which I think helped in the time that it was up, but. Although some people, I think, maybe tried to see how fast they could get going.
Just as you're cresting
Yeah.
over the hill.
Yeah.
Well, the ordinances call for a certain amount of parking for manufacturing, for warehousing, for office, for general office spaces. So I think we should look at a parking plan or a vehicle plan of some sort here. And was the blue rectangle, is that supposed to be the porch part of the barn? I don't
That's the
understand.
proposed,
I can't see. what
Yeah, I
the
can
rectangle is.
The red is the proposed new thing, but what is that? There's barn and there's, what's that blue square?
it's probably the porch.
Yeah.
that's the.
So this is the building, your
Yeah.
existing building, okay.
So you're talking about a parking plan for the potential for the 4 employees. Like, because we have parking for 60 cars during events. We would not be using this building during event time.
Mhm.
So I'd just love to know a little bit more about what you're thinking about.
I don't know, do you think we need something like that for a plan?
I mean. If they're not running at the same time. I don't know why we would ask for additional parking if there's already 60 parking spaces there.
If there is, yeah, I mean, yeah, how would I know there were 60?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah,
unless
sure.
You just mentioned it.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah. What was my other point? So when you do drive by that area, the area behind the little shop there, is that wet? Is that a ravine? Is that
Not
why
being- It's foggy.
it's boggy?
The grass, like the mowed grass area?
Well, just when you go in the entrance, drive in the entrance, it seems the area to the left, just a little bit in
It's
front,
not-
it seems
Oh,
it's part
yeah,
of an
yeah.
overall swale, maybe down to the river or.
It seemed like a vegetated wetland when I pulled up a GIS map. And it looks like it matches this brown line border that's already on your map. But I can pull that up.
Matches the tree line, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that, anything we have to think about for setbacks from that?
No, those are ones that usually don't have an issue with DEP or anything. It's usually the significant habitat wetlands that they get involved in, but not these types. Not unless they're building right on it.
So just the proposed location is half of it's gonna be on existing parking lot. So we're gonna get rid of some flower boxes and some things that are already, already sort of turned into it. And the other half is just going into the lawn area that's next to the barn.
So, I guess that, I always wondered, so how does this work? The property's been permitted for an event center, right?
Yep.
If we add manufacturing onto that property. And then if you sell it in 5 years, and the next person wants to open a brewery or something.
So,
This is all still happening in residential,
right,
but what gets carried through
so,
regarding that piece of property?
so there can be a 15% expansion of a footprint for a non-conforming use. Now, that's assuming we're saying that this is a non-conforming use for that area. I'm sorry, my home camera is going off a few times. Neighbors love to walk
From the
their,
kitty cat?
no, I have an outdoor one that the neighbors love to walk their dogs by. So sorry. if
So
that
say
didn't-
that again. How does that work?
So if this was so we have our land use matrix that says what's allowed in what districts and whatnot. If something was permitted, but time's gone on where it's no longer an allowed use there, then it's not conforming, kind of like what you're saying. So they can only expand 15% of the footprint when it was initially done. So, but they can only really change over to a different non-conforming use once. So for this, that's part of the reason I wanted to have this pre-application, just because I could see it as one of two things for what it falls under, hybrid growing or agriculture related business, like what it originally was allowed under. But if the board sees it as a different thing, it'd be good to know that now, so we don't have this big meeting and people then say, well, it shouldn't be this, it should be that, and
What did you say that use was hybrid what?
there's a thing, hybrid growing.
Where is that?
Hydroponics.
I've never,
That's-
never seen this.
It was a new one created in 2020. It's under rural uses.
Rural uses.
It's
Hybrid
page six
growing.
dash six, and it's defined as a building or structure that incorporates multiple food production methods, techniques, or mediums such as but not limited to agriculture, aquaculture, animal production, hydroponics, or other sustainable strategies.
And there was also small agriculture and large agriculture that aren't really defined in
Yeah.
there either.
And that is defined, and that was more of when agricultural tourism was starting off, but that would still fall under it as a similar use. So if it's one of those two, then it's an allowed use, and there's nothing wrong with them doing an expansion of any kind. But let's say, I mean, you're saying warehousing. Warehousing isn't allowed in a residential area, so that's where we get into a land use issue. So that's why,
Well, didn't you just say you're warehousing in another town?
Yeah.
Right.
so I have it tonight under pre-application for, I think, agriculture related, just because that's what it was originally, but if the board sees it as that or hybrid growing, then
It's
That's
not,
just-
there's no growing going on. This is all
Oh, it's,
aggregating to
it's
produce,
food production.
right?
It doesn't really, well, I guess it is sort of all,
well,
either growing animals or plants or fish.
Yeah.
I mean, the agriculture related business seems to be the better fit there.
and that's fine. That's just what it would be approved under.
Yeah. Seems pretty straightforward to me.
Because agriculture is allowed in residential. Or because of the
Yeah.
previous.
Because it is,
permit.
because it is allowed under, in the residential district.
How do we define large and small?
It's usually based on the amount of traffic that comes by there.
Are we
So
calling this large?
let me pull up that amount.
And what's related business? We don't have a definition for large and small.
In my book,
I believe I moved it over there, but it's also under the specific standards.
I'm still using.
So small scale would be if there's vehicle trip count of 40 vehicles. Yeah, 40 vehicle trips. Large scale is exceeding, and one vehicle trip counts as one in, one
Is
What?
that in a, what period of time?
per day. And this includes seasonal events and activities limited such as farm days, Maple Syrup Day. So if this is just an extension of the current use, which is agriculture related, then we're just counting for all vehicle trips from both of them.
Okay, okay. The only reason I drew that line is I see one looks like planning board, one says CEO, which I assume is code enforcement.
Yeah, which means Mark would handle it on his own.
Hopefully you guys are busy enough. I like to see a successful business when you've got that much moving in and out.
time.
Well, thanks, Rick. I'm brand new to this, so I got
Yeah,
lots of beginner questions.
we got your welcome moment later on in the agenda.
One last question for me. What exactly is a glamping tent? I
Keep
have
in
never
mind-
heard of that in my life.
Keep in
Ever been
mind,
glamping?
keep in mind, Johnny wasn't on the board when you first
Okay.
came.
Wait,
Yeah, I think
excuse me,
Barbara was-
wait a minute, excuse me, sir. I was here when you came, so I've been here 9 years. So
Were you?
Yes, I was. I remember this application.
But you weren't on the planning board at the
I
time.
sure was.
In 2017?
You must have taken,
Yes, I was, because I remember these guys.
You,
you must have taken the night off.
I was,
And then
you
I-
look at the record.
you were, no, hold on. You were here when they did an addition. After 2019.
Yeah, they put this
Wait a
tree
minute.
porch on.
Yeah, because we had to add the porch for egress purposes.
So you're stating I wasn't here for the original one?
You were not.
I'd like to have you go back on the record now,
I-
because I think I was.
I distinctly remember Barbara was the only person at this table.
Your
Who was
hair's
part of the
not
original
graying up yet,
That's right.
Johnny.
I was here.
I will-
Okay.
I'll
I
pull
don't
it
know.
up. Sorry,
Sorry, I don't.
sorry that this is taking too long. I'll pull up the records and show you.
If you will. No, I mean, no rush, but anyway.
When we started, we had 5 glamping tents, and those are just fancy tents where you have beds inside and, sort of.
Yeah.
Glamping is.
Like glamorous camping, it's a terrible term.
Oh, I.
So, yeah, so that's what I do, glamping.
I think glamping is the most fun word.
It's very, it is what it is. It explains itself.
People get it.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else have any questions? All right, do you have any questions for us?
I think so. I mean, we'll definitely follow up with, about the crossing. And then we'll be here next month, is that?
That
Was a formal application.
Yeah, so are there any?
I'll email you 20 times between now and then.
Yeah, I figure. And I've sent you the standard list just to answer out. Are there any questions on those you have for them, or any waivers, or are there any questions you guys have, or things you would want to make sure is cleared up in the final application? And we are going with agriculture related.
I think so.
Is that
Makes sense to me. I mean, this
is.
is gonna be approved by the code enforcement officer anyhow, isn't it?
Hey, if you guys are saying agriculture related, then we'll look at the traffic counts, and if everything total is under 40, then. Yeah,
Okay,
Then what was the answer to that?
so if you have, and keep in mind, vehicle count means if it goes in, but it immediately goes out, that's 2. So that's really 20 cars going. If it's under that per day, and we're keeping in mind the events that happen there as well, then it would go to the code enforcement officer. But if it's over that, then it would come back to the planning board. And I would almost suggest that just for the public hearing, but that's just my thought. But I'll talk to you about the vehicle traffic and everything.
Yeah,
Whereas
I-
if everything total is under 40, then if you all saying agriculture related, then that's what it'd be.
But so was the public notified about this meeting?
Yes, I did, and I had to put it on Facebook, and unfortunately, because the post office was closed last week, when I was sending everything out, people probably got a delay, but I did get some people asking about it. And
So that would be my only concern if the overall enterprise is expanding, do the neighbors want to know?
the neighbors were notified of the application tonight.
What would they want to know for the application? So it come in front of the back planning board again?
Well, because they already know this was happening, and this, I can certainly give I can certainly get,
Just asking a question.
I'll give a letter update if we, again, comes down to the vehicle traffic. If we're determining it's enough for the code enforcement officer to review it, and only code enforcement officer, I'll send out an update to the neighbors.
So will you have specific signage for this part of the business, or is it just another building on the property? I mean, are you announcing it in any way, or is she driving down 32, or?
No,
It's not for public
yeah,
access, so.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be a shop there or anything like that.
Right.
yeah, I guess the only consideration I have is just because it is under a grant, there's, you know, a lot of pretty specific reporting and so forth that I have to do. So depending on what happens next month, that's just something I'm gonna have to. Again, this is my first rodeo with a federal grant, but just there's things that I'm gonna need to do depending on where.
Max is good at writing grants.
And I do,
They got a pretty good, well, how much?
I got a 99 out of 100.
I mean,
Oh,
yeah, I
yeah.
was gonna say, I can't argue too much when they have.
Not
that.
messing
I wouldn't-
around. All right.
I'm not
Um,
gonna argue on these.
Oh, my goodness.
Max, on the vehicle count. How do we help you determine that? I mean. From a use perspective, if you drove by there every day for 3 weeks, you would not see a discernible difference in the traffic. So it's like, how do we help quantify that, I guess?
I actually know how I mean, I could do that annually, right? Because I know the number of events we're having this year, the
Mhm.
guest counts at those events and the expected, you know, average
Yeah.
amount of cars.
It-
So would that be over 365 days?
Yeah, if you could get that at least for start, and I'll talk with Mark on how he'll do it.
Okay.
Because if he's gonna end up doing this, Mark is working from home because of some, he's recovering from surgery, so I'll work with him if, it does turn out to be that way, but I'll chat with him about how he'd wanna consider the vehicle traffic as well. But if you do have that as a start, that'd be appreciated.
And I have 2 lovely letters of support from 2 businesses in town. It's, I don't know if that's. Helpful to bring next month or forward it just to you as part of the.
Yeah, I mean, it's public
Yeah.
comment, it's public comment, they can
Yeah.
have it on file.
Well, tell us their names, because then.
Oh, it's just
listening
Lynn
can-
from Perch and Sarah from Odd Alewives.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, it was very nice of them to do that.
She's not making beer anymore.
Well, just for the season.
No, to them, they're stopping beer making.
Oh.
They still
But
make
not
pizza,
pizza.
right? 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
important.
well, that's what they're focusing on is the pizzas.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I emotionally need that to be true.
Same.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, appreciate it.
All right. What's next? Land use ordinance discussion.
Yeah, you don't have to say it.
Yeah, you don't have to.
that's our cupcakes.
We're probably about to have a long, boring discussion.
Well, hope not.
Well, thanks. Max, I guess, why don't you walk us through the proposed changes? here?
So many of these are ones that we talked about last year, but I think you remember we were gonna have the April workshop. But then we had the storm happen, so we couldn't do it anymore. And so it didn't feel right to put it on the warrant when we didn't have anyone have a real chance to speak on them. So these are the same items from last year. There are a few new ones that have come up because of this past year, but I'll go through all of them.
Okay.
Article 3, nothing different from what I suggested last year. This is just having 14 days across the board for all these initial reviews. And it thoroughly outlines the town planner code enforcement officer review process so that whenever we do get an application, and if Mark and I are reviewing something, the members of the planning board are notified, the emergency services are notified, the neighbors are notified. And if we hear nothing or no one requesting a public hearing within 14 days, then that gives Mark and I the right to approve the application or reject the application, whatever it is. So even though Mark and I will try and do this now, and we haven't had that many applications, we want to make sure that it is written down so there is a formalized process so that if Mark and I both are not here, it does not get lost in this process.
So we're gonna start seeing in our email every single application that you receive.
That goes under code enforcement officer and planner review. If it's something that just Mark is reviewing, then
Got it.
that wouldn't be applicable.
This is the CP in the
Yeah.
matrix.
Right.
Got it.
And then the rest is just some corrections, nothing else really. And
What's the modification line under 3.3.3 that doesn't seem to have any text that goes with it?
I'm not actually sure. I think that might have just been a spacing issue, but
It's like a line deleted or something.
Yeah. really nothing there. But that's it for Article 3, just clearing that up and also designating the town planner as the one responsible for the level of review. I'm pretty much doing that anyways.
Hmm.
And that's it for Article 3. Don't know if anyone had anything to jump on there. And Article 6, it's all just matrix focused.
So the small and the large agricultural businesses are, where are the definitions? You've read something else, but
15.
where's it from?
All Article 15. The way back,
My version would not have that.
It's not under the agriculture or.
hold on, I'm pulling it up. 15 ish. Okay, I think it's because that wasn't included, since that was something we kept saying we wanted to include, but I didn't because it's part of the old changes that we didn't have the public hearing for.
Ah.
So that's something I'll include for this round.
Okay,
But that difference between small and large will be put in there. So as for other changes,
let's talk about single wide manufactured homes,
yes. State item.
state item. What does that mean?
If we allow residential use in that zone, we have to allow someone to have a at least a single wide manufactured home. But we can have all the other standards still apply. So I heard the comments on the historic village a moment ago. There are the architectural standards of manufactured home would have to follow. And I will, if
Okay.
I will,
Standards.
I will get the state language on that.
Next, so that big thing from the state come down yet that we talked about, the MD something, but what was that called? The big dictum that the state of Maine had.
Accessory units?
Yeah,
Like,
no, like the whole, like, it was MD something or other. You know what I'm talking about?
LD 2003?
That's it, LD 2000. Does that come down?
Yep, that's in fact.
So the state did finally bring that to bear, and now the town has to scurry to follow it.
We have passed that already. That's why that's what the warrant last June was,
Oh,
that we
okay,
do
okay,
allow.
Okay, okay.
I've had so many people already ask about, how can I get another home on a very tiny parcel? And I can
Right.
tell them accessory dwelling units.
Okay.
It's been a very interesting year.
Have you issued any permits for those yet?
I believe Mark has done a few already.
Those based on sewage, is that what those are?
Accessory dwelling units?
I think that's the biggest pitfall. I think.
The septic still, when someone is doing it, they do have to prove that the septic can handle an accessory dwelling unit. And we have it capped where if someone wants to put up a 1,000 square foot, either attached or even another mobile home on the lot, they can do that without any impacts to the, without requiring an additional minimum lot size. So
Right.
in the rural area, 80,000 square feet per unit. But you don't need that if you are doing it as an accessory dwelling unit.
But they still meet setbacks.
Still must meet setbacks, still must meet the water and the septic requirements and everything else.
Then can you you can't subdivide it and sell
No.
a smaller lot.
You have a 2 acre parcel, you can have your accessory dwelling unit, but you can't then turn around and say, well, I'm gonna now split that in
It's
half.
one owner, yeah, okay.
And so I
Why
have,
not?
because then,
I mean, as long as you meet the minimum lot size, right?
but that's if it's an accessory dwelling unit. If you're gonna split it and then have it as its own lot, it's now a primary unit for that lot.
Right. Why is it objectionable?
If it's big enough, you mean?
Yeah, if
And
you
they're not
split
sharing
it
a
and that
septic?
lot then has the 80,000 square feet for that accessory dwelling unit, that's fine, but
Oh, okay, all right, yeah.
It's kind of a Subdivision.
Yeah, exactly.
I've
Don't
had
get
fun
into
talking to so many towns about this law.
Sorry about it.
One thing I'm really curious about is the impact on future sale price.
Or
Like-
with the accessory dwelling.
Yeah, like if you have a lot that has an accessory dwelling unit as a separate building on it, like it's not terribly desirable to everybody, like not everybody wants to buy a house that has a rental unit on the same property, like I'm curious to see how that works out in the future.
It'll be interesting. The inquiries I've had so far about those, and this will be my last bit and then we move on, but the inquiries I've had so far are just either people who are dedicated to having it as a rental unit for
Oh.
someone else. But it's more, of it has been for families, pretty much.
Yeah. I would
Mom
get
who wants to
one.
give it to a daughter, son who wants to get something for his dad.
Right.
That's been most of the stuff.
Yep.
So, going back to the matrix, combining the inn with bed and breakfast. Barbara, I think this was something you were asking about.
Yeah, so you separated them?
No, bed and breakfast and inn were separate ones, but if we go through with these changes, inn would just be combined with the bed and breakfast category.
And it had been in the hotel motel category.
Right.
Yes.
Now, so the
So-
Airbnb in here, or is it another name, or am I just missing it? 'Cause I don't.
That should be,
It's on that same page, right?
Okay.
Short-term rental.
yes, short-term rental code enforcement officer.
Sure.
Right above commercial uses. Let me see where you're at. Six, no,
No.
back 2 pages.
Oh, sorry.
I don't know where.
Okay.
it is.
Right here.
Short-term rental.
So what happened to overnight cabin?
So.
And yeah, getting rid of the overnight cabin was because I couldn't find a definition for that one. And so hotel and motel just seemed to be the one to keep together. Inn falls with bed and breakfast, and that's about it.
All right.
No daytime cabins?
And that actually gets us to page 610 anyways, where that overnight cabin's corrected.
Boy,
Uh,
massage therapy got hit hard, huh?
Well, this is a new category, right?
Yeah, this was something people were asking for last year.
Was that due because of Route 1, that building there that came and went?
Yep,
I'm neither confirming nor denying that statement.
that's why.
How do you find the comments on Facebook, though?
Um,
Well, that doesn't say planning board. That's all.
no,
That has not, we have nothing to do with that.
no, and keep in mind, when I'm saying CEO or
Yeah.
PB for any of these, it can be changed. I'm just having it as a minimum, because I think
That's a great thing for CEO to be in charge of.
Okay.
well, and also I don't know, it's still relevant to have that in there,
Yeah, I was
or if it's a
gonna
bad timing to have it in there.
It's, I mean, you can't list every single possible business, right?
No, but this is something that we actually could follow a state definition on,
Oh.
so that's why it's there. And also people kept saying, well, there should be a thing for, I don't even think we ever permitted that one on Route 1. But this is just an option if we want to have that, but I also understand with how things have been, we can just scratch that. If people are worried what it might imply.
It just seems odd. We've got massage therapy school in town. We've got a lot of massage therapists. I mean, they need a special category on that.
Well, they should be licensed if you're even gonna, I mean, I'm getting into the
Right.
weeds here, but if you're licensed,
Oh, yeah.
that's a therapeutic modality. It's no different than a doctor.
Yeah, I think there were also some specific standards that I don't know if I included, but it did mention having a license shown,
Yeah, right, yeah.
but
But that's like, could be a psychiatrist with an office somewhere in town. I mean, they wouldn't be on this list.
Then-
So,
probably, I mean, if this isn't a thing, then usually would just probably fall under like office.
right.
So if everyone's fine with that, I can scratch that category and it's just left as office.
When we have office in here.
Yeah, you have office as allowed everywhere except rural and residential.
I don't know. What do you guys think? I think it's silly myself.
Well, I'm looking at the medical office.
One of the least controversial things I was expected to talk about tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's
Kinda stands out.
controversial.
It's weird.
I mean, you could see that being part of, there's a version of this could be its own thing, like leisure.
Right.
And there's a version that could be, recovery in a medical office.
Mhm.
Depending on the application.
May I say something?
Mhm.
This, I believe this is here because some of the local massage therapists wanted it more clear who was actually licensed and stuff, that, so that if you went into an office, you would find that it was licensed. I mean, we have a school here, we have a lot of massage therapists. They didn't just want to make it clear. Of course, they made it harder on themselves in some ways, you know, but that's why it came up.
But if you go into the Jefferson office building, multiple massage people in there, I think, but they don't have to come in front and get a special,
No, because it's
it's
an
an
off,
office building.
because it's an office building and there are offices for now.
And they have their license. I mean, that's a whole nother thing that the
Right.
state runs. Well, it's an interesting problem. I'm just not sure it's part of the ordinance.
I can also,
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, it's not such a
also.
common thing that doesn't really have any specific demands beyond the
Right.
regular office
Right.
section,
Not-
which
not
is
special
defined as a
parking.
room or group of rooms used for conducting the affairs of a business, profession, service, industry, or government. It doesn't seem to fit the medical office.
Maybe the hours. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I can also just mark this as something to come back to if we want to, if people want to just sleep on it a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me to just strike this. Like, it doesn't seem like it's doing us any. It's like it's useful, really. I think that it fits just fine into the office category. Although the locations where it's allowed are not the same between the massage therapy line and on the next page, the office line. Where it's office is disallowed in the rural and residential. Or I guess just the rural, that's where it's different. Do we care about that, the locations?
Just allow someone to have an office in the rural area. That might be the compromise.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that.
All right.
Like that.
Before we turn the page, minor commercial additions, is that a percentage of
10% of the footprint.
10%? Okay.
So if someone has a 500 square foot building and they want to make a 50 square foot addition, Mark would include that. 51 square feet, it goes back to whatever it falls under in this category. So on the next page, 611, the only change was nursery or greenhouse, planning board approval in the residential district. This is so that if someone wants to put a greenhouse in the rural or residential area, if it's farm type thing, then they could just get planning board approval if it's more of a growing type thing, but
But what you're talking about is like a Moose Crossing kind of thing with this description, right?
Well-
Not just putting up greenhouses in
let me pull up the
the
definition.
farmland. Right?
Keep in
Yeah.
mind, we gave you two a warning to leave instead of
Yeah.
seeing all the forms.
Yeah, we won't
Glad
take
I
it
said
personally.
nice to the massage parlor.
So retail nursery as defined as growing, cultivation, storage, and sale of garden plants, flowers, trees, shrubs, fertilizers, milady garden supplies. So, you
And
know, I'd say that's exactly what we're talking about here.
and perhaps maybe the concern is,
Is there a greenhouse?
yeah, there is a definition for greenhouse, a building or structure whose roof and sides are made largely of glass or other transparent or translucent material, and in which the temperature and humidity can be regulated for the cultivation of plants for subsequent sale or for personal enjoyment. So, you know, if I want to make my own greenhouse, that's not necessarily something that's going to be growing stuff to sell to people. Does that mean I can't do it in the residential area?
So this is for commercial purposes, not for private, right? Is that what,
I mean-
yeah, commercial uses.
Yeah.
A greenhouse has it both ways. Says plants for cultivation of plants for sale or for personal enjoyment. But a nursery was definitely a commercial business.
I mean, perhaps take away greenhouse from this category and put greenhouse into rural uses. Or I could, again, leave it, I just didn't know if this
What are
might
we in?
make it easier or not.
I don't really have an objection either way.
And I could see separating commercial greenhouse from just
Personal
some
enjoyment.
person wants their own greenhouse. I can't.
I
see
could
them-
also see how having a greenhouse for personal use, not needing to come to the planning board.
Yeah,
Right, exactly. I would just take greenhouse out of that, because we're in a commercial category right now, so a nursery, they're gonna have what they have. They're gonna come in front of the planning board anyway, so they're gonna just
Well, if
bring their buildings and their whatever, their plan.
so. Cause I almost feel like I just heard two different solutions happening at the same time, so. Allow the nursery greenhouse in the residential district with planning board approval, but also remove. The term greenhouse from this item.
what I heard was. If someone wants to use a greenhouse for their own personal thing in a residence, it's not a business, they shouldn't need to come to the planning board.
Okay.
So maybe you have. I don't know, maybe we write commercial greenhouse.
I mean, I guess if it's Barbara's point, it is under commercial uses already, so.
Yeah, so that
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, yeah.
this is like a nursery business.
Yeah.
So
okay.
that's fine, you
So I
can.
guess if it's a personal use, it doesn't have to come to the board.
Yeah, right,
Be really steward.
okay.
Then I guess it's a matter of whether a commercial greenhouse is gonna come to the board.
That's good to know, because I was gonna have a greenhouse built.
So in agriculture, you can just do agriculture in these
Yes.
zones and you can have a greenhouse.
Yeah.
Just checking.
Yep.
Well,
So
So-
you don't have,
no, make no changes to this then?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
All right, no change.
Moving on. Woodworking is next. I remember this conversation.
Yep.
We decided that in the village or downtown was inappropriate.
so downtown, it has a line through it, so that's supposed to be blank?
It's
So,
it's currently allowed
Oh, okay,
downtown.
But we would remove it.
okay,
And then,
that's fine with me.
based on what was said, when we were discussing this item, we would just allow woodworking to happen in the rural areas, the residential areas, and the rural village areas. With code enforcement officer, plan and review.
We approved one of these.
Yes,
We
that's
did.
why this is being discussed.
Right, but is that putting, I mean,
He's moving,
all the gentlemen, okay, so
Yeah.
gentlemen, it's that we approved.
worked out.
Well,
The reason why we removed it is because
Fumes?
it turned
That's
into
the fumes.
a bunch of complaints from neighbors, one neighbor in
Okay.
particular, and it was all the problems that we thought were gonna happen all
Happened.
came to pass. Yeah.
But I thought those were addressed, if my memory serves me correct, he had a piping and it was the flow of airs kind of dispersed it. I remember you were questioning him on that.
well,
And
again, it was mostly one person who made the complaints. We've had the code enforcement officer, we had a lot of people
Okay,
always going
alright.
down there and they never found a problem. But it caused an issue, so that's why we're doing this, so that so that I specifically, and Mark, I don't know if he'll listen to this recording for some reason, don't have to deal with this type of thing again.
Okay. Well,
Okay. With that said, so that's woodworking in those areas, removed from the downtown. And then the next was ironically, based on what Stephen was talking about earlier, community service organization. The idea was just to have this as code enforcement officer, plan a review in all districts except industrial. Just Mark
Makes
and I
sense to
would,
me.
and then all the way to page 19. Just two tweaks to the setbacks. One would be to reduce the industrial setback to 75 instead of 150 for road setback. And then in the historic village, reduce the side setback from 15 to 5. For the industrial, it's mostly because if you look at the industrial zone lots, I don't think any of them could follow this 150-foot setback. And I've had many inquiries about one parcel in particular that if you were to follow this 150-foot setback, that's almost an undevelopable lot at that point. So I have it at 75 just because that's what we have it for rural and residential areas as the most, as the maximum amount.
Um. This would apply to the road that runs into the industrial park too, right? So you're saying all the buildings have to be 150 feet off of that road as well?
That's what this was created.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
Yeah, I mean, when we get to private roads, it's a question of is that is
That-
that considered private
right.
or more of a driveway, but yeah. It's
Sure, but I could see how the lot, it's at the corner of North Noblesboro Road, Route
Yeah,
32,
that's
like
the-
the 150 feet takes up the,
Yeah.
most of the land there,
that one's gotten a lot of inquiries and most people, they see that 150 setback, say, I can't do anything then. So-
Yeah, right.
And then for the historic village, I've just had a few instances this past 2 years, I think, where people will try and split the lots, or people will start getting into some civil discussions about lot lines not actually being in the right spots. One example, I think, was church where Capewood is now, 85 Friendship. Like when that was being split, they weren't gonna be able to meet the setback requirement. But there was something in state statute that allowed that to split to happen. Then some others have just been, again, territorial issues where someone would put up a fence here, but it's actually a lot closer than it should have been. And the other reason I would also encourage this one is because the historic village goes right around the downtown. And that has no setbacks whatsoever. So my neighbor could have no setback requirement, and yet if I'm one parcel over, suddenly I have to be 15 feet away from them. It's more of
Why
a
5
transitional
feet?
thing.
Is that a state thing? I mean, is it like, I mean, you can walk between buildings that way and stuff, but is there any rhyme or reason to 5 feet? I mean, it's less smaller than you can fit a car in, so that's good.
Just so neighbors are still full 5 feet, don't build right up to the line, because then I have people who decide to put up a fence where they think their boundary line is, and then they realize, nope, you build it on your neighbor's line.
The fire department has an opinion about that, because with, all these fires out in the west coast, is it that like,
I can
So-
certainly ask.
What's a,
We
I don't
had
know
a-
if there's
we
a
had a
safe
fire,
thing.
we had a fire in downtown that spread from one building to another just a
that's
couple of
true.
weeks ago.
And they had more than 5 feet. Well, pretty close, yeah. Okay, no, that's fine with me, the 5 feet. I'm just,
I mean, I'll ask emergency services, just their opinions on it.
Firemen bringing body, their equipment through.
Well, this is the side and rear setbacks, so it's not really an issue for them to get to the house. It's more of just how close the houses are gonna be to, or structures are gonna be to the property line. That's really it. And I just had 5 on there, just having it some place between right up the line for downtown, and then 15 feet away from the village. Sorry about that. So I did also have one more inquiry. It's not marked here because I had someone ask about 6.9.4.1. Where it's saying a duplex will be subject to the same minimum lot size requirement as a single family dwelling. They're curious if the planning board would consider having that increased to include triplexes, quadplexes, pretty much multiple units in a single building, not having the same minimum. Yeah, I know,
Isn't that multifamily?
that's multifamily, but the question is whether this item means a duplex being only just 2 units can only have the 80,000 square foot benefit, Where if I make a triplex, 3 units in one, a multi-unit, does that mean I still have to do 80,000 square feet per unit? Or is it just 80,000 square feet total based on what this says? Because it's only saying a duplex. I mean, I don't mind making that clarification. We didn't have to face this problem with Volunteers of America because it was historic village. They didn't have a minimum lot size. But if in the rural district, I have 4 acres and I want to put down 3 units, does that mean I'm allowed to do that if it's all in that same building?
What is the function of the lot size? Are you also thinking about things like leach field and septic?
Yeah, lot sizes were mostly for septic and well, which is why if you're in the downtown or if you're on sewer and water, it's less of a minimum lot size requirement. Whereas in the rural and the residential areas, 80,000 because we don't have them there.
So if you have 4 separate families using those same resources, is that enough space to do that safely or correctly? But I'm asking because I have no idea.
You'd have to see the plan.
Yeah.
See the, you know,
And that's why if it's all attached as one building, I don't think it's that much of a problem.
can you do a duplex and an accessory unit? In a
Yeah, I mean,
80,000?
Yeah, I mean, because of LD 2003, the whole thing of duplex versus triplex has kind of been gray because that's now a thing. But let's say I want to build 10 units. Do I have to do 80,000 for each of those units? Or could I just do 80,000 square feet as long as all 10 units are in one building?
But I'd love to see the additional housing if it leads to that.
I'd be interested in seeing the septic and the well if it's in the
Oh, yeah.
rural or residential area. But I guess that's the question. Should I amend this item to be a bit more clear that's saying as many units as possible, you fit in there? 80,000 square feet is all that's being required?
I'm uncomfortable with the unknown part about everything working on that amount of space. That's what gives me pause.
So this is specifically in the rural district.
Well,
this
no, I mean,
question. Right?
well, no, it's
No.
anywhere. They just give rural districts as an example.
Well, that's what it says in this.
By way of
Right.
illustration in the rural district, a single family would require this. So that was a interesting way of just saying as an example.
Well, otherwise, why do we have density ordinances at all?
Because if I don't make it all as one building, if I want to do 5 separate individual houses on the same lot, first of all, it's a subdivision. But then they're all something that probably could be split as different lots in time, whereas if it's all 5 buildings in 5 units in one building, it's probably not going to be split onto different lots anytime soon. But if they're separated as 5 different buildings, this would still require them to have 80,000 square feet for each of those lots, whereas if it's all in one building, it's just 80,000 square feet for that one single building.
Hmm.
We can also come back to this another
Yeah.
time, because this was thrown at me and I know that this is a big one for people to sit and think on.
I think it's a complex discussion. I think it needs time.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think there's some interesting points that have been made about the septic fields and stuff, but also like if you're gonna create a development that's housing, like you gotta provide some green space for people, you know,
Right.
and like
I
if you're putting a row of townhouses onto a lot that is big enough for the townhouses and nothing else, like that's not really, you know, the type of development I think that we want to see.
And do you want to create that much lease housing versus stuff people can own on their own? Which I know that gets outside of planning.
Yeah.
So I'll,
Living unit site, we've got some numbers somewhere, don't we?
minimum living units,
So like 700 square feet or something that you're allowed, minimum size. Like for the.
oh, like the interior habitat thing?
So like, I don't know if it's a single,
I think-
single wides or the accessory units or
I think
Yeah.
190 square feet is the minimum interior.
that, in our ordinance?
I think that's,
190?
I think that's statewide now because of
Yeah.
LD 2003.
Yeah, we
So
had
at
a
100
conversation about this last year.
So
So at 190 square feet,
lovely times.
42-foot high.
Yeah.
We could
Size
put-
of
we could
two
put a
prison cells.
dozen in there.
Exactly.
Hey, if that makes you happy.
So that's it for Article 6.
Right?
Article 7 is actually just one big sweeping change throughout. I brought this up when talking about light industrial with the North Country wind bells. But this is just changing it, so rather than saying planning board, it's reviewing authority. So if Mark is reviewing something, an application, and there is the issue of buffers and vegetative buffers, rather than Mark following this to the letter and coming to the planning board on what to do on vegetative buffers, Mark is just allowed to do it on his own, rather than the planning board. And if the planning
Makes
board is
sense.
reviewing it, the planning board determines buffers.
Seems straightforward to me.
That's clean.
Because believe it or not, I have had someone actually say, why didn't my neighbor removing a tree come to the planning board?
Wow.
So I want to avoid that. in the
Thanks,
future.
thanks for not bringing that to the planning board.
And I didn't do that for the light industrial one in Article 10, but I would like to try and do the same thing. Just if it says planning board, put it to reviewing authority. Show that next time too.
Okay.
Two more items. I'm going to hold off on 10 for now, just because. Well, no, I guess we should probably just do 10 right now, because we have Steven here. He's the one who suggested including some of these changes. For Article 10, the only changes are for improving some of our standards, specifically for solar developments, commercial solar development, I should stress that. So I do have some inclusions on here. Abandoned would be considered if it's not generating power for more than a year. Parties are responsible for removing all physical installation above and below ground. That's just adding some specification on that. When waste disposal happens, it can't just be buried in the town of Waldeboro unless that is given permission or given written notice to the town.
Can you explain what that's supposed to mean exactly?
So when the solar farm is decommissioned and they're getting rid of it, it has to be taken to a licensed place to be removed and not just dumped here in the town of Wald. Like they can't just make this big old pit and dump all the materials there.
So we can't take a truck full of panels to the
The dump,
dump.
unless we get it certified.
So there's multiple ways to interpret this. You're gonna decommission this. What are you required to remove? Everything? You required to remove your gravel driveway? And truck it out of town?
Well, we can specify the gravel driveway part not being included, but
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think this is meant more for just the actual panels and the structure itself.
how about conduit? You can't take conduit to the town of Waldeboro transfer station without written permission from the town office?
Yep.
What's the purpose of that? I mean, it's just trash. It's a regular waste stream.
Think you'll
I mean-
find the volume of it on the commercial will be painful.
Well, we had one come through here recently and it was, it wasn't a huge mass and, I guess, I don't know, it's odd. I mean, I guess, people could write the letter and get the permission from the town office, but I guess I don't know what the purpose is causing someone to truck it to another town to dispose of it there instead of disposing of it in Waldeboro and paying the fees in Waldeboro.
Well, it's part of the standard of applicant must also comply with all government regulations regarding waste disposal. So I'm saying probably go to another time. That's probably already the requirement for when they have to just get rid of the solar panels or the conduit or anything else.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, the solar panels, there's probably no way for the the Waldeboro transfer station to really deal with that. But that's one
That's one
relatively
component, yeah.
small part of what would be demolished here. You know, it's mostly metals, conduit, fencing, you know, that type of thing, which is all normal waste and stuff.
Is this just a way of giving the transfer station a heads up by having a letter that describes it?
Well, we are able to keep track of that type of thing, and I mean, if they do just bury it somewhere in town without actually following those steps, then that's the other part of the standard, just having something to use if that happens.
Okay.
Max, is this just more, this has nothing to do with where they get the panels from, do they? I mean, nothing I see here, because I objected to the gentleman earlier. I said I would never support on moral and ethical grounds anything that came from China.
Mhm.
But this doesn't address anything like that, but can we put something in like that or discuss that?
A little late at that point.
But yeah, for that
Well,
one
that's what I'm saying, but it's, this still
but-
doesn't, two
but-
wrongs don't make a right.
It's true.
We're talking about it after the fact, but what if these are coming from people who have forced slave labor? Coming from people who are held hostages? I don't want to vote for that. I wouldn't.
I can put some language in there. The other thing is, just to answer the first part of that
Sure.
question. I also don't know what solar panels are gonna be made in the next 10 years. There might be some made here in the US and
Right.
they're
Well, as I
cleaner
recall,
and
what
whatnot.
the gentleman said after my objection, he said he was getting his from South Korea. Okay,
Right.
so I mean, it's just a moral and ethical issue that I have with it. So somewhere in there, you know,
This
maybe.
This is all about taking them down.
Oh, I know, I understand that. but
Yeah.
I'm just saying I've noticed it and I want to make sure my voice is heard on this.
So, and then getting down to more specific items for solar developments. I'll just read these off. Ground mounted development shall not exceed 15 feet in height as measured from the ground. All fencing shall be elevated at least 6 inches from the ground to permit passage by small terrestrial animals. The design and materials of the fence is subject to the reviewing authority. Access into the area must also be possible by the fire department in the event of emergency, which is already done with the lockbox. All on-site newly installed utility collector or transmission lines connected to a commercial solar development shall be placed underground except to the extent prohibited by interconnection agreements or applicable regulations. All transmission lines placed underground shall be installed and constructed to the applicable standards adopted by local, state, and federal agencies.
So we just approved the solar field on Mangtown Road.
Yep.
And as part of that, there was a whole string of poles
Yep.
that went down the road because it was required by CMP to have the cutouts and transformers, et cetera, and they all had to
Yep.
be on separate poles. So you're saying we have to now build a underground vault that a man can climb into and access all of these cutouts and things?
That would be on the developer's part.
Right. So this is a large cost
Mhm.
that would be applied to the solar developer
Mhm.
in order to eliminate utility poles on private property. Like
Well,
what's the purpose of this?
part of it has been scenic focus. I know that's usually a discussion whenever there's solar developments. And then again, Stephen could probably talk on some of the other ones that I don't even have written down here. But
Can this even be done?
where's my letter from MMA?
No, I mean, no, I don't mean
financially.
legally. No, I
financially.
mean technically. Like, can you even put this stuff underground, or is this just like a poison pill that's going to end any solar development in the town?
I'm worried about that second part. I'm trying to think of the last place in Maine where I saw major underground electrical infrastructure or even communications.
Yeah.
Like we don't even micro trench here because of rocks.
It's true.
Our solar farm was done buried lines.
Yeah,
about 200 feet off the road.
but did you have high voltage cutouts underground in a vault?
Is it
Like-
commercial or like your home solar?
No, it's a 64 kilowatt community solar.
Oh, cool.
So part of the equipment that's related to this are the cutouts, which
What does cutout mean?
a cutout is it's a thing on a pole that a guy in a bucket has to use a non-conductive stick, and he physically disconnects the live lines. So when that happens, there's a very large electrical arc that jumps across from the line that was connected, that is now disconnected. It's it's done up on a pole for a reason, because there's a safety concern. You need to be a distance away from it. You have to wear arc flash gear. It's a safety concern. And now what this is describing is taking all of that stuff that was on that chain of 5 poles and moving it underground. So now if you want to make that disconnection, like you're now in a vault inside of a concrete box underground with, giant electrical arcs jumping around. Like it's not the safety situation that I think any lineman would choose to be in.
But on each pole, it needs to be, it's not just at the receiving end of things. It's not just in one location and the rest is,
Two of the poles out of that chain of 5 poles were specifically just to have that disconnect on.
Why don't they just shut the power off, Randy?
To the whole town.
Well, for some period of time, or that, they can't just sectionalize that?
It's how we do it. I mean, there's certainly ways to do that, but that's not how we do it. If they're going to disconnect the power to your house at the pole, that's what they're going to do. They're going to take a stick basically and knock the wire off, and that's it. Yeah. We don't have remotely controlled electrical grid like they do in Europe. It's all old school and physical. Yeah.
You can't hack a stick.
What's that?
You can't hack a stick.
Yeah, right.
so you're concerned for a commercial operation, this is too expensive to request?
If it's even possible to do, we don't do a lot of underground electrical transmission in this country. Like maybe it's possible, but
Where did the language come from, Max? Did you get it from the state?
It came from a solar ordinance from Morrill.
Yeah, moral. They crafted a solar ordinance that is in line with the views of the community that essentially you can't legally stop solar farms. But you can correlate it.
So the
Have
view
they
of the
built any
community
farms?
is Anti-solar.
Correct.
So it's poison pill.
Everybody,
Right.
so like, this town already has a ton of solar farms, right?
Mhm.
We call them solar domes, because they're domes. So moral, knowing you can't legally say no more building in our town, they crafted an ordinance that was like, look somewhere else. So
it's intended to be a
it's
poison pill.
intended to be difficult.
Right.
And this is how you do it.
So on that note, there were 2 other items that I just didn't have here yet because I wanted to have MMA confirm this as well. But it is also limiting the size of the solar arrays themselves. So putting a cap at 5 acres. I didn't even have to look at the Morrill one for that because I knew that was happening in Warren with the massive solar farm that they're building over there. But you could have a limit of 5 or 10 acres. And then also limiting the amount of vegetation that can be cut down. Those are 2 other options that I just didn't have in here yet because I felt that was going to be a discussion for tonight anyways. And I wanted to get this, but
You're saying limit the amount of vegetation that can be cut down
Yeah.
Right.
for a solar field?
So you do one or the other, you either,
I mean, you could clear cut land
right.
just to take the wood. Like,
This is why I want to get MMA opinion, and this is why I wanted to talk with you before I typed everything up.
I mean, I'm certainly opposed to any sort of poison pill that's going to stop solar development in Walboro. I don't know how anybody else in town feels, but I'm certainly opposed to that.
what's was the one we did on,
Manktown?
Manktown? How many acres? I forget. How
Oh,
much that was.
Mangtown?
That was,
What?
I thought it was only 6 acres.
yeah, that was actually one of the smaller
I
ones.
thought it was less than that. Yeah.
Did you say 6?
Yeah, I thought that 6 was the area that they opened.
It's one of the smaller ones we've actually had.
And the one on, by the Dutch. Is that good?
Travis Reed's, that was, I think that was about twice the size, maybe. But the other thing that we have with the solar is that we're actually at a bit of max capacity with this one. So other than people doing their own personal ones,
Right,
we're really not gonna get too many commercial ones. The only one reason Manktown was able to work was because Warren upgraded their substation.
right.
So a few more solar can get onto that one, and that's what they're hooked on apparently.
There's all those storage houses that could put solar on them. I
Uh,
drive up and down Route 1, and it's like,
True.
let's get solar on these guys.
Brendan?
Acres of that.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, distractions.
So, okay, made a note on that. I mean, that's all I had for specific ones. Steven, did you have anything else you wanted to add to?
Well, I mean, I'll speak to the comment on clear cutting to create a solar farm, because essentially the argument when they create a solar farm is that we're gonna do a carbon footprint reduction or saving carbon. And so when you clear cut a forest,